hands won't stop shaking. I'm sitting in my car in the parking lot of a Panera Bread on Route 9 and I can't make myself go inside. My phone is face down on the passenger seat. I already know what the notification says because I saw the first three words before I flipped it over. Your card was charged. I pick it up. $4,200, a venue deposit. A place called Hartwell Gardens. I've never heard of Hartwell Gardens in my life. I sit there for probably 4 minutes just staring at the number. Then I put the phone down, go inside, order a coffee I don't drink, and drive back to my apartment in complete silence. Let me back up, because none of this makes sense without the context of what my family is like. What they've always been like. I'm the oldest of three. My parents have been married for 31 years and they will tell you at every family gathering that they sacrificed everything for their children. What they mean by that is that my dad worked double shifts at a distribution center for most of my childhood, and my mom gave up a part-time bookkeeping job when my youngest brother was born. I don't dismiss that. That was real, and it was hard, and I grew up knowing they worked for us. But somewhere along the way, we sacrificed for you became the answer to every request, every boundary, every time I tried to say no to something. It became the family currency. You could spend it on anything. My name is Jolene. I am 32. I work as a project coordinator for a mid-sized logistics company in New Jersey. I make decent money, not great, not terrible, and for the past 4 years I've been careful about it. I have a savings account I built from nothing. I have a small emergency fund. I have a credit card I pay off in full every month, except for 2 times, both of which I'm not proud of, but I recovered from. My fiancé's name is Patrick. He's 34, works in IT infrastructure, and the first time he met my family at Thanksgiving 2 years ago, he pulled me aside in the kitchen and said very quietly, "They're a lot." I laughed because what else do you do? We got engaged 14 months ago. Nothing flashy. He proposed at home, on the couch, during a rainstorm, and I said yes before he finished the sentence. We agreed we wanted something small, intimate, maybe 80 people, a venue that didn't require a loan. That was the plan until my mother started making other plans. The shift happened gradually, which is how it always happens with my family. One conversation, then another, then a third, where suddenly things you never agreed to are being treated as settled. My mother mentioned my cousin Renata's wedding as a reference point. Then she mentioned a florist she knew. Then she started talking about the vision, a word she used so often that Patrick started using it sarcastically at home in a fake Italian accent, which made me laugh every time even when I shouldn't have. My brother Mitchell and his wife Cora have been married for 6 years. Their anniversary is in September. My and Patrick's wedding date, which we chose together, is also in September, the 13th, specifically because it's a Saturday and the venue we liked had availability. The first time my mother mentioned combining the events, I thought I had misheard her. We were on the phone. She was talking about the guest list and how my dad's side of the family would want to come down anyway. And then she said, almost in passing, "And since it's so close to Mitch and Cora's anniversary, we thought it might be nice to do something for them at the same time. A little celebration." I said, "What do you mean at the same time?" She said, "Just incorporated, so everyone's already together." I said, "Mom, that's my wedding day." She said, "Of course it is, sweetheart. Mitch's anniversary would just be a small part of it. You'd barely notice." I told Patrick about it that night, and he looked at me with an expression I'd come to recognize, the one where he's choosing his words very carefully. He said, "You need to shut that down right now." I told him I had. I thought I had. 2 weeks later, my mother texted me a link to a venue. The venue seated 300 people. I called her immediately. I said, "Mom, we talked about 80 guests. This place holds 300. She said, "Well, we added some people from Dad's work, and Mitch and Cora have their own friends who'd want to come for their part of the evening." Their part of the evening. "Jolene, don't take that tone." I took a breath. I said very clearly, "I am not sharing my wedding with anyone, not even Mitch and Cora, who I love, It is my wedding day and I am not splitting it, she said. You're being very selfish. There it was, the word I'd been waiting for since the conversation started. I said, okay, and hung up. Patrick asked how it went. I said, fine. Neither of us believed me. Here's what I didn't know was happening in the background. While I was having those phone calls, while I was thinking I was managing the situation, my mother had already started calling vendors. She'd contacted a caterer. She'd spoken to a florist. She'd gotten pricing for a DJ and a photo booth and, apparently, a gelato station, which I didn't even know was a wedding thing until much later. She had also, at some point, given my credit card number to someone. I don't know exactly when or how she got it. I have some theories. I gave her my card once, 2 Christmases ago, to buy something online when her laptop was acting up. I assumed she hadn't saved it. I was wrong. I only found out about the $40,200 charge by accident. I check my account most Mondays as a habit. I look at the weekend transactions, make sure everything looks right. That Monday I saw it. Hartwell Gardens $4,200 deposit toward a full venue rental of $14,800. My name was on the account as the primary renter. I sat in that Panera parking lot for 4 minutes and then I drove home and looked up Hartwell Gardens. It's a catering hall about 40 minutes from my parents' house. It holds 260 people for a seated dinner. The full rental, $14,800, is due 90 days before the event. The date listed on my confirmation email, which I received forwarded from a reservation someone had made in my name, was September 13th. My wedding date. I did not call my mother that night. I know myself well enough to know that if I had called her that night, I would have said things I couldn't take back, and I needed to think first. I made dinner. I watched half of a show I can't remember. I went to bed and stared at the ceiling until 2 in the morning. Patrick knew something was wrong. He asked. I told him to give me 24 hours and he did because he's that kind of person, which is one of the reasons I'm marrying him. The next morning, I called the venue directly. I spoke to a woman named, I'm not using her name, but she was kind, and I explained that a reservation had been made in my name without my knowledge or consent. She was quiet for a moment. She said, that's a serious concern. I said I knew that. I asked her what the process was for disputes. She walked me through it. I took notes. Then I called my credit card company and reported the $4,200 as an authorized charge. They opened a dispute and issued a temporary credit while they investigated. Then I sat down and wrote a list of everything I knew. The charge $4,200 now disputed. The venue, booked in my name, my card without my consent. The event, my wedding date for an event I never agreed to. The guest count, presumably 200 plus, including my brother's anniversary guests. The total liability if I did nothing, $14,800 minimum, plus whatever other vendors had my information. I thought about calling a lawyer. I'm not going to pretend I wasn't scared. $14,800 is not an abstract number when you're someone who has worked carefully for 4 years to stop living paycheck to paycheck. That's a real number that could hurt me for a real amount of time. I called a friend from college, Blythe, who is not a lawyer but works in financial services and has better instincts than most people I know. I laid out the situation. She was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, Joe, they committed fraud. I said, I know. She said, you need to document everything before you say a word to your family. I said, I know. She said, and you need to start making your own plan. This is the part I want to say clearly. Because I've thought about it a lot since. I didn't want to hurt my parents. I didn't want to hurt Mitchell and Cora. I love my brother. Cora and I aren't close, but she's never been cruel to me. My parents are difficult, and they have a way of making every conversation about themselves, but they're my parents, and for most of my life, I would have done almost anything to keep the peace with them. But they had taken my name. They had used my credit to book an event I'd explicitly said I didn't want, and if I just confronted them, if I just called my mother and said, I know what you did, what would happen? She would cry. My dad would say I was overreacting. Mitch would stay quiet. Cora might feel bad or she might not. And at the end of it, nothing would change. The venue would still be booked in my name. I'd still be on the hook unless I fought it, and fighting it through proper channels while my family pressured me to let it go would cost me something I couldn't afford, emotionally, financially, maybe both. So I made a different decision. I decided to let them keep going. Patrick, when I explained my plan, sat very still for about 30 seconds. Then he said, "You're sure?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Okay. What do you need from me?" That moment, that exact moment, is one of the reasons I knew I was marrying the right person. Here's what I did. I quietly cancelled my original credit card and transferred the dispute on the $400. I got a new card with a new number and put it somewhere my mother had never seen. I left the old card technically active in name, meaning I didn't report it stolen in a way that would alert my family. But I zeroed the available credit on it by paying it all the way down. If anyone tried to charge anything new, it would decline. I also started making my own, separate, private wedding plans. Patrick and I had already done initial research on a smaller venue. There was a place, a converted farmhouse property about 20 miles from where we live, that had a Saturday opening in late August, 3 weeks before our original September date. It held 75 people for a seated dinner. The cost was $4,500 for the space, catering extra, and it was exactly what we talked about in the beginning. I booked it, I paid with my new card. We sent invitations, paper, mailed, personally addressed to 68 people. Our actual people, our friends, the family members who treated us like family rather than a resource. We did not send invitations to my parents, to Mitchell, to Cora, or to anyone my mother would tell. We asked the people we did invite, quietly but clearly, to please not mention it. The invitations said, "Jolene and Patrick are getting married. Please come celebrate with us. This is a small and private gathering. We ask that you keep the date and details between us until after the event. Thank you for your love and your discretion." Almost everyone said yes. Two people couldn't make it due to prior commitments. One person called to ask if everything was okay, and I said, "It will be." In the weeks between booking our real wedding and the date itself, my family continued planning theirs. My mother called twice to discuss centerpiece options. I said sounds great and asked no questions. She mentioned the caterer had a new tasting menu and asked if I wanted to go. I said I was busy, but she should go ahead. She mentioned Cora was very excited about the photo booth. I said that's great. Cora deserves to have fun. I don't know how I stayed so calm. I think it was because for the first time in this entire process, I felt like I had control of something. My wedding. My actual wedding. It was planned. It was booked. It was real. And it was ours, and no one could take it from me because no one knew about it. My dad called once. He said, "Your mother says you've been distant." I said I'd been busy with work. He said, "You know this wedding is going to be beautiful. We're doing everything for you." I thanked him and got off the phone as quickly as I could. That night I cried a little. Not because I was sad exactly, but because I was tired. Tired of the version of me that always nodded and managed and kept the peace. I'd been doing it since I was 17. I was 32. That's a long time to smile through things. Patrick found me at the kitchen table and sat down without saying anything and put his hand over mine, and that was enough. Our real wedding was on August 23rd, a Saturday, at a farmhouse with white string lights and wooden tables and a ceremony under an oak tree that was probably 80 years old. It was 81 degrees. Someone brought a dog. The flowers were sunflowers and white dahlias, and they cost $400 total. And they were the most beautiful flowers I've ever seen in my life. Patrick cried when I walked down the aisle. I mean, actually cried, not misty, not emotional, actually tears running down his face while he laughed at himself for it. Blythe gave a toast that made everyone at the table laugh and then go quiet at the exact right moment. My aunt, who I haven't seen enough of, danced with her husband to a song I didn't know, but they clearly did. We ate, we toasted. We got married in front of 66 people who love us, and not a single moment of that day belonged to anyone but us. I called my mother the Monday after. I want to be honest about this part. I did not call her to be cruel. I called her because avoiding it indefinitely wasn't something I was willing to do, and because I'd had 48 hours of being a married woman with exactly the marriage I'd wanted, and I felt steady enough to have the conversation without falling apart. She picked up on the second ring. I said, Mom, Patrick and I got married on Saturday. Silence. Then, what? I said. We had a small ceremony, 66 guests. It was beautiful. More silence. Then her voice changed. That particular shift I'd heard my whole life, the one that moves from surprise to hurt to outrage in about 4 seconds. She said, You didn't. We were planning Jolene, the venue. I said, I know about the venue, Mum. That stopped her. I said, I know you booked Hartwell Gardens in my name on my credit card without asking me. I know you've been planning an event that I explicitly said I didn't want. I know my name is on a $14,800 contract I never signed. She said, We were doing this for you. I said, You were doing it for Mitchell and Cora's anniversary, which is fine. But you were going to make me pay for it. That's not my card. My name, my credit. I didn't authorize any of it. I paused. I've already disputed the 4,200 deposit. The card you have on file has zero available credit. If anyone tries to charge anything to it, it'll decline. A very long silence. Then she said, You already got married. Yes. Without us. I took a breath. This was the part I'd rehearsed. The part I'd said out loud in my car twice the week before, so it would come out steady and not cruel. You were planning an event that wasn't what I asked for, with people I didn't invite, on my credit. I wasn't going to let my wedding day be something that happened to me, so I made sure it wouldn't. She started crying. I let her. I didn't apologize, and I didn't explain further, and I didn't say anything to fill the silence. Eventually, she said, Your father is going to be very upset. I said, I know. You can tell him I'd like to talk to you both when you're ready. I'm not going anywhere. I said I loved her and I got off the phone. My dad called 2 hours later. He was not calm. He said the word selfish 3 times, which I'd been expecting. He said after everything we've done twice, also expected. He said, You embarrassed this family, which landed harder than I thought it would. Not because I believed it, but because I know my dad and I know he meant it, and it still hurts when your father says something like that. I said, Dad, someone charged my credit card without my permission. That's fraud. I protected myself. He said, That's a dramatic word. I said, It's the accurate word. I'm not angry. I'm not trying to punish anyone. But I wasn't going to let it keep going. He said some other things. I listened. When he was done, I said, I love you. The offer to talk stands when you're ready. He hung up. He didn't say goodbye, which hurt. I sat with that for a while. Mitchell texted me 3 days after the wedding. He said, Heard what happened. I didn't know about the card thing, for what it's worth. I believed him. I texted back, I know. Thank you for saying that. He said, Congratulations too. I hope it was everything you wanted. I said, It really was. Cora sent a card, an actual card in the mail, which I wasn't expecting. She wrote a few sentences about how she hoped we'd be happy and that she was sorry things had gotten complicated. I appreciated it more than I expected to. Here's the part that's still ongoing, because I want to be honest about that too. My parents and I are not fixed. We've had 2 real conversations since then, one that ended abruptly, one that went a little longer. My mother swings between hurt and defensive and occasionally lands on something that sounds like genuine reflection, but I've seen that before, and I've learned not to put too much weight on it until I see whether it holds. My dad is slower to come around. He's old school in the way that means apologizing out loud feels like losing, so I don't expect it directly. What I've started to notice is that he's asking how work is going and listening to the answer, which is, for him, a form of reaching out. Hartwell Gardens refunded the 4,200 deposit. It took about 3 weeks for the dispute to fully resolve, but it did. The remaining contract is technically still open in my name, which my family is responsible for either cancelling or finding another way to pay for. I've spoken to someone about my legal options there and I'm monitoring it. So far, no additional charges have appeared. I'm not pretending this was clean or easy or that everything resolved neatly. I'm still figuring out how to be in this family while also being a person who doesn't let herself be treated like a backup plan. That's a long project. I'm 32 and I've been the dependable one my whole life, and unlearning that is not fast work. But here's what I know. I got married in a field under an oak tree with the person I love, surrounded by people who showed up because they wanted to be there, not because they were on a list someone else made. Nobody cried from stress that day. Nobody felt like a supporting character in their own story. 66 people saw me become Patrick's wife, and every single one of them was invited by me. Patrick asked me recently what I'd do differently if I could go back. It's a good question. The honest answer is that I would have said a harder no earlier. Not for drama, not for revenge, but because I'd been soft pedaling my no for so long that no one in my family knew what it meant anymore. I'd trained them to wait me out. That's on me. I'd also have told my dad separately from my mother earlier in the process. He and I have a different relationship than my mom and I do, and I think he might have been reachable before things escalated if I'd gone to him directly and said, "This is not okay and I need you to hear me." Maybe not. But I think maybe what I wouldn't change is the wedding. Not one thing about it. The dog that someone brought was named Charlie, and he sat under the table the whole reception and ate a roll someone dropped, and I have a photo of him doing it, and it's one of my favorite photos from that entire day. That photo lives on my phone, right next to a picture of Patrick's face when I walked down the aisle. That's what my wedding looked like. That's what it felt like to finally say no and mean it. I've been sitting with this story for a while now, trying to figure out what it actually taught me. Not the surface version, not set boundaries or know your worth, because those phrases have been worn down to nothing from overuse. The real thing underneath it. What I keep coming back to is this: the situation with my parents didn't happen suddenly. It happened because of a long, slow pattern that I participated in. Every time I said no and then softened it, every time I let something go because fighting it felt like too much. Every time I smiled and nodded and privately told myself I'd handle it later, I was teaching the people around me what no from me actually meant, which was keep pushing. That's not me letting myself off the hook for how they behaved. What they did with my credit card was wrong. Using someone's financial information without their consent doesn't become okay because your family. If anything, the relationship makes it worse because it means you knew exactly what you were taking advantage of. My mother knew I would be slow to report it. She was counting on that. But here's the thing I had to reckon with. She wasn't wrong about me. The version of me she was betting on, the one who would absorb the cost and keep the peace, that was a real version of me. I'd been that person for 15 years. You can't be that person for 15 years and then be surprised when the people around you expect it. The change didn't come from a single moment of courage. It came from exhaustion, honestly. I was just tired of managing everyone else's feelings about my own life. And when I got tired enough, something shifted. Instead of asking permission or waiting for someone to finally hear me, I just started making decisions. Quietly. On my own. Booked the farmhouse, mailed the invitations, got married on a Tuesday morning with Patrick, his sister, and Blythe in our kitchen, signing the paper. And then again for real on August 23rd under an oak tree. There's something that happens when you stop waiting for people to give you permission to live your own life. It doesn't feel triumphant at first. It feels a little lonely, actually, like you stepped out of a role in a play that everyone else is still performing. My parents were upset. My dad said things that hurt. That part was real and it wasn't clean, and I'm not going to pretend it resolved itself neatly. But I was married. Actually, really married, in the way I'd always pictured it, with 66 people who were there because I invited them, not because they were on someone else's list. Patrick cried. Someone's dog ate a dinner roll under the table. Blythe gave a toast that made my aunt laugh so hard she had to put down her glass. That's what it cost me to finally mean what I said. Some hard conversations, some distance I'm still working through. A few weeks of quietly holding a secret while my mother called to discuss centerpieces. I'd do it again.